On Thursday morning, the Carolina Hurricanes hosted their first day of training camp at Lenovo Center as both groups got to skate that morning. We get to dive into the sights and sounds and listen to Rod Brind'Amour's press conference after practice. All of that on a Friday edition of Locked On Hurricanes.
You're Locked On Hurricanes, your daily podcast on the Carolina Hurricanes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into a Friday episode of Locked On Hurricanes, your team every day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Thank you to the everydayer for making this your first listen of the day. 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, talking everything about your Carolina Hurricanes. I'm your host, Zach Martin. I'm the Carolina Hurricanes credentialed beat writer over at the Hockey Writers. I also do a weekly column on the Chicago Wolves called Wolves Weekly, which I'll be starting here in a couple weeks as we get closer to the start of the AHL season. I'm the co-host of the Searchcast, which is a weekly Carolina Hurricanes podcast, along with all my duties here at Locked On Hurricanes. Got a fun show for you guys on a Friday edition of the pod, as we get to look at the day one lines and pairings from both groups of C1 and C2. Also get my initial thoughts on both groups as it is day one. No overreactions, just kind of like, interesting tidbits of looking at both of those groups and looking at the power play situations for day one. And then finally, we're going to end with the Rod Brind'Amour press conference as he got to meet press for the first time at training camp and just going over what it's like being back with the guys and getting back underway with officially on ice hockey stuff going on. But before we jump into all of that, now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube TV and YouTube. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. So like I said, we had our first lines on pairings for day one, as the C1 group took the first part of practice in the morning at 9 a.m. and then C2 did it at 11 a.m. at Lenovo Center, which on Thursday afternoon was actually officially for the third time named. The name is on the building. It's been unveiled, so we get to see what the actual outside rendering of the logo is, and we got to see all the Lenovo stuff inside the arena. I know from some pictures, people were wondering why there were so many people in the stands. That was actually the Lenovo people who were actually there for the unveiling of the name. So it was still technically a closed practice to public, but since it was a naming ceremony too, and there was also a naming press conference for the new name of the arena, that's why they had so many people there in the first place. The first official practice will be, for public is today at Invisalign Arena in Morrisville, with C2 going at 9 and C1 going at 11 a.m. So that is your open practice. Anything at Invisalign that you see on the schedule is that open practice for fans. But Thursday afternoon, it was mainly closed off to the team, but also to the newly named Lenovo and all their people. So looking at the C1 group, and it featured 5 new players. Of course, you got William Carrier, Tyson Jost, Eric Robinson, Jack Roslovic, and Sean Walker. And, of course, with the returning of Joachim Ryan and Shane Gostisbehere. This is the more veteran-heavy team of the look of what you're looking at in terms of the guys who are going to be featured on the opening night roster. But this is kind of what the lines were kind of set up for the first group. Svechnikov, Aho, Jarvis, which I kind of figure would be the case. Just with where the team is right now on the left side of the ice, it makes the most sense to see Andrei Svechnikov on that first line with Aho and Jarvis. And then I actually did mention this in my recent article of the storylines going into camp, and one of them was looking at the top 6 or the battle for the top 6, and if they are going with more veteran-heavy first group, I would not be surprised if you see Jack Roslovic as that second line left wing, and he was actually in that spot. So if you want to check out that article that I did for the Hockey Writers, I'll leave it in the description if you want to go check that out and just see what the storylines I was looking at for the Hurricanes going into camp. And that first one, one of them was talking about the top 6 and how Jack Roslovic could be that guy. And in that, it was Roslovic, Kotkaniemi, Nietzsche. So that's kind of the top six I would kind of see the Hurricanes possibly going with. Of course, we're so far ahead of opening night on October 11th. This is day one. Like, there's no, like, we don't have to overreact to them. This is just like what we're looking at right now. Then it was Jordan Martinick, Jordan Stahl, and William Carrier. This one was kind of interesting because you thought, will you see like a Robinson or someone else move up to the third line? But no, they actually moved up William Carrier, who everyone thought was mainly just a left winger, but it seems like he can play on both sides, and he was on the right side with the Jordans. Then you had Brind'Amour, Jack Drury, and then you had Eric Robinson and Tyson Jost kind of flipping off on that right wing side for the fourth line. And then you had Slavin Burns, of course. Orlov, Chatfield did stay together. Of course, like I said, this is his first day of camp. Like, let's not read too much into it. Then we got Shane Gostisbehere and Sean Walker. And then we got Ty Smith and Joachim Ryan as the fourth defensive pairing. And then, of course, you had Frederick Anderson and Pierre Chekhov on either side of the ice. And then one of the main things that everyone noticed after day one was the back skate. So that's officially back. And you can definitely tell that it's still not fun for anyone just because of what you have to go after. Do all that practice, and then you get back skated. Of course, welcome to hockey. Guys are getting that conditioning a lot higher. Now, the one thing that was very interesting, you look at the power play lines that the Hurricanes kind of rolled out with their first group. And this is what they look like off the rip. So you had Sebastian Aho, Seth Jarvis, Martin Necas. So, we were talking about how Martin over the summer, how Martin Necas was on PP2 last year. And he kind of wanted to be back on the first power play unit. And right now, on day one, it looks like he is up there as of right now. Of course, it's just taking your first look at it. They have Andrei Svechnikov with Shane Gostisbehere. And then, initially, I really liked, what Shane can bring. And I think he should be someone who could be on the PP1. Of course, we'll talk about more about that in the second segment. Then you had Jack Drury, Jesperi Kotkaniemi, Jack Roslovic, and then you had Burns Orlov. So you go with two defensemen on that PP2 group for group one. Now the C2 group, this is a lot more of your, secondary players, a lot of your prospects, PTOs, guys that, are kind of helping to fill out more of a roster, taking a look at, just getting some eyeballs on some players before they go to, the AHL or their respective areas and all that. Then, of course, like I said, take a look at where your prospects are at, where your possible PTOs are like and stuff like that. So it's one of those guys might make the main roster, but it's also kind of like, let's just see how they're doing. So you had Bradley Nadeau, Felix Unger-Shorm, and Jackson Blake. That's a really good first line, honestly, for the prospects. Like, if that's a line that you can see with the Chicago Wolves, let's say if those three don't make it into the NHL, and that's your first line going into Chicago on opening night against the Milwaukee Admirals on the 12th, that is a very scary first line if you're facing the Chicago Wolves and that you have Nadeau, Unger-Shorm, and Blake, because you're talking a guy who's really risen through the ranks, and Nadeau who's got an NHL plus shot. You got Unger-Shorm, who's supposed to be really, really good, was one of the last cuts at camp last year. And then you got the Hobey Baker finalist in Blake, who had 60 points with North Dakota last year. Oh, that is a scary group. And then you got Yaska, Skylar Brind'Amour, who is official in a PTO. He did tell Corey Laviolette of The Athletic in the North State Journal that he is there on the PTO and he hopes to be on the main, stay with the organization. So we're definitely hoping to cross our fingers that he's at least with the organization in some way, possibly on a two-way deal starting in Chicago. And then Rocco Grimaldi being on the right wing. I know on Thursday's show, we talked about how he's like on Puckpedia is listed as a center. Hurricanes, he's right wing. So let's just say he's a center right winger. Having him on the second line right wing spot with Brind'Amour and Yaska is still really, really good. And then you got Gleb Shrikosov, Ryan Suzuki, and Noel Gunler as your third line. That's not a bad third line, honestly, either, especially with how Shrikosov and Gunler both did at the rookie showcase, both tying with 5 points. Not a bad winger setup with Ryan Suzuki, who's really hoping for a bounce back this year as your center. Then you got Josiah Slavin, Justin Robidas, and Sam Gagner. Of course, Sam Gagner is one of the other three PTOs. Listed as center, also plays right wing. Not bad with having Justin Robidas, who's one of those guys that a lot of people want to keep an eye on, especially how he did last year in the ECHL, and of course, more importantly, how well he played with the Quebec Ramparts in winning a championship over there. And then, of course, you got Jacob Slavin's younger brother, Josiah, on the left side. Then you got Dominic Fenzor, Scott Morrow as your first pair. Then you got Ronan Seeley, Charles Alexis Legault. Then you got Riley Stillman and Bryce Montgomery, and then Anthony Honka and Alexei Himo-Salmi as your fourth guys. And then, of course, you had Jan Peretz and Spencer Martin in the goals. And that's kind of what you're looking at in terms of what your first day pairings were and just your lines overall. So, like I said, it's day one. Like, there's nothing to really get super hyperbolic or super like, oh, this is the group we're gonna have. Lock it up or good. Things could change. We're still ways away. We haven't hit our first preseason game yet. And of course, like I said, there's no reason to overreact. It's just hey, let's take a look at what the Hurricanes are kind of thinking of as of right now as you go into your first day of on-ice camp. What could possibly work? We're going to see some tweaks and stuff like that. But it's just hey, it's a day one. Let's see where the team is gauging and see, what possibly could work for the Hurricanes. So that's kind of what you're looking at in terms of all of that. But stick around for segment 2, and I will give my initial thoughts on the C1 and C2 groups, and I dive a little bit more into my overall thoughts on the day one lineups and the pairings for the team. Like I said, it's one of those things where it's nothing to get super excited about, but it's kind of like, that's very interesting. So I'll dive into that more here in a second on a Friday edition of Locked On Hurricanes. All right, guys, we got to talk about Gametime. And with Gametime, they have a new feature called Gametime Picks. That makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. And with Gametime Picks, they filter out the fluff to show only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. The one good thing I like about them, too, is the fact that they curate it to make it easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy theaters, and so much more. And that's the great thing about Gametime Picks is that it's not just for sports. You can pretty much get deals on almost any type of event. And their all-in pricing feature, well, you do get this where it's a feature that shows you the total up front with no surprise fees at checkout. But you have to make sure that you have to turn on this feature to get that all-in pricing with the money up front. You don't have to worry about waiting for checkout to know what you're paying for. No, this part of the app I really like. I think you guys will like this too. It's their seat viewfinder. You get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy, so there's no surprises of, anything like obstructed views or awkward angles or not great seats. You'll know what you're looking at before you even buy the tickets inside the app. So you're basically getting rid of any of the guesswork that comes to with buying tickets. And that's basically what Gametime is. They take the guesswork out of buying tickets when you use their app. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL. That's LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Well, what time is it? Well, it's Gametime. Welcome back to segment 2 of Locked On Hurricanes, your team every day. So like I said, at the end of segment 1, I'm going to give my initial thoughts on what, looking at the first, day of lines and bearings and stuff like that. Of course, as I mentioned earlier, it's one of those things where it's not something we need to really have knee-jerk reactions on or have like super hot takes on stuff like this. It's more just like, okay, this is very interesting of how the Hurricanes are looking at their group as of day one. Rosters aren't set, lines aren't set. This is just this is what they're kind of picturing in their heads of what they might look like or what they might go with on opening night. But of course, things are subject to change as we are still days and days and days away from opening night. Like, we're less than a month, but we're still a good week, couple weeks out just for being able to know what that roster is going to look like on October 11th on Friday night against Tampa Bay Lightning. But overall, going through C1 first, of course, obviously, I'm not really surprised by that top group. Like I said, Svechnikov, Aho, Jarvis, I would kind of figure that might be your top line going into the season just because of You do have Jordan Martinook, you do have William Carey, you got Brennan Lemieux, but other than that, you really don't have a bona fide like this is a top six guy in your second line left wing. So you're kind of having to figure out who you want to slide there. And I said in the article that I'll put in the description, below, I would see Jack Roslovic kind of being that guy. He has played some top 6 minutes with the Columbus Blue Jackets and also the Winnipeg Jets. Not so much with the New York Rangers because of how loaded that team was. But if you look at the time that he had with the Jets and the Blue Jackets, he played a lot of top 6 minutes with those teams. So I'm not really surprised that the Hurricanes might be able to as of right now, we don't have anyone that we can slide into the top 6. And of course, you don't know where the rookies stand. Now, it could be a case of Bradley Nadeau or Unger Storm or Blake or whoever might, Gleb Cherkasov, someone might make a case to be in the top 6 just because of how the roster's set up. But let's say you're not going with a prospect, you got to go with a veteran guy on the main roster. Jack Roslovic for me is that guy. And just looking at where that top 6 is of Svechnikov, how Jarvis, and then it's Roslovic, Kotkaniemi, Martin Necas. I could really see that being more of a top 6 that you're going to probably see a lot for the Hurricanes this upcoming season. So I'm not really surprised. That's kind of how it was on day one. Of course, like I said, things are subject to change, but overall, I could kind of see that where you're like, okay, here's your top 6 guys as of right now, unless some changes where the Hurricanes bring someone else in or a prospect really shows out. So that's kind of like the initial thoughts of what your top 6 looks like. Of course, the Jordans are together. That's not a surprise. We saw it for the last season, how well they've played together. It just makes more sense for them to kind of be back together. Of course, you kind of wish you had Jesper Foss on the right wing, but due to missing the whole season, unfortunately, we're not going to have him this year. They do put William Carey there, and I know initially a lot of people thought he was just a left winger, but from what I've seen, has played some right wing before as well for the Golden Knights, so it's not surprising that he's someone who could play on both sides of the ice, and that's not a bad guy to have on your right wing, especially when you got the Jordans. So I'm very curious to see how that's going to work out, if that's like what does that look like in a scrimmage, a preseason game and stuff like that, where you got the Jordans and William Carey. And Carey does bring his own physicality to the game, and he can be someone that could really blend in well with the Jordans for the upcoming season. Fourth line, Brendan Lemieux, not shocked just because of how he came back, kind of how the roster's set up as of right now. I wouldn't be surprised if the Hurricanes kind of want to slide him into the lineup for most nights if if we're kind of short on forwards and healthy scratches and stuff like that. So being on the fourth line left wing, he played there a lot last year. When he did play, I could see him kind of being there. Of course, Jack Drury, your center. That's kind of it's like you're basically kind of have him etched in at that point for the fourth center spot just because of where the roster is with the center core right now. So that's no surprise to have him there. Eric Robinson, I kind of figure he might be third or fourth line on the right wing side. He can play left wing, but he's another one of those guys that can play on both sides of the ice. And then Tyson Jost was kind of swapping in with him. I could see Jost being like the extra guy for the forward crew just because of where you're looking at for all the centers and stuff like that. So if they go with him as your extra skater, I could definitely see him being that extra forward of someone that the Hurricanes could have throughout the season. Defense, Slavin Burns, no surprising, going to run it back like last year. Orlov Chatfield, though, this is where it was getting interesting of what does that look like? Do you keep them together? Do you do Orlov Walker? Then you do Gostisbehere Chatfield? Because Gostisbehere Chatfield played really well together 2 seasons ago, but the way Orlov Chatfield played, I could really see that being a thing where the Hurricanes might run it back with those two and then just go Gostisbehere Walker, which still is a good third pair. And like name a better third pair where you have a guy who's offensively minded like Shane Gostisbehere, and then you have a guy who's a really good two-way defenseman but has a really good defensive side to his game with some good transition play. And Sean Walker, not a bad third pair, honestly, for the Carolina Hurricanes. Then, of course, your extras, Ty Smith, Joakim Ryan. No real surprise that you're kind of your extra D pair. Possibly 2 of 3 guys that could be fighting for a 7th D-man spot for the Hurricanes. Like I said, Riley Stillman could be one of those as well. So it's just how does it kind of look for the Hurricanes in terms of that aspect? And then, of course, goaltending, no real surprises there. The power play group, I kind of mentioned it in segment one where it's, you have Aho Jarvis, kind of running back from last year's team. But then you have Martin Necas and Andrei Svechnikov. That is a really speedy force power play group, especially with Jarvis and Necas and Svechnikov. That's a pretty fast group right there. And Aho's no slouch himself. And we all know that, Martin Necas wanted to be part of that top group again. And as of, like I said, it's only day one, but he is up there. So it's really interesting, the fact that you're going to have, transition guys like Aho and Necas together, but then you add in the speed of Jarvis and the power forward ability of Andrei Svechnikov. And then Shane Gostisbehere is your defenseman, which I've said for a while now, ever since the Hurricanes signed him. He is your Brady Shea replacement, and he is someone who I could really see being quarterbacking that top power play unit. And if he's going to be that guy for the Hurricanes, that's perfect. If you're picking any offensive defenseman to being that guy for the first power play unit, it's Shane Gostisbehere. Second group, Jack Drury, Jesper Kotkaniemi, Jack Roslovic with Burns and Orlov. You got two forward-minded defensemen in Burns and Orlov. Really curious to see how that's going to work. And of course, you have Jack Roslovic, someone who's more known for his distributing of the puck. So, of course, with Kotkaniemi kind of being that same guy too. So it seems like it might be a lot of rebound shots from the points, looking for rebounds and stuff like that. Jack Drury could be one of those guys who can really crash the net because we saw that late last season. So the power play 2 group is a very, very interesting one to look at. Just going through the C2 group real quick. Of course, I kind of mentioned already, Nadell, Undersore, and Blake. That's a really good top line if you're looking at your, in your terms of your depth chart for prospects. Having those three together totally makes sense. Then you get the PTO guys of Brind'Amour and Grimaldi together. I can really see them, both signing contracts with the Hurricanes. There could be 2 ways that I'll see them both in Chicago, which I don't think Wolves fans will be very upset about if you see Brind'Amour and Grimaldi down there. Cherkasov, Suzuki, Gunler, a great third line. Like I said, you got your 2 wingers who did tie in the rookie showcase with 5 points. Ryan Suzuki, who's someone who's really trying to, bounce back after last season. You kind of, carry on and, hopefully be the guy that everyone hoping he has been since he's been drafted with the Hurricanes since 2018. And then Josiah Slavin, Justin Robidas, Sam Gagne. Gagne is the other PTO, 35 years old. Justin Robidas in the second year of his ELC, played good last year with Norfolk. Hopefully see what he can do in the AHL after winning a championship with the Remparts in the QMJHL. Defense pretty much makes sense of how you're looking at it. No real surprises there. So that's kind of the initial thoughts. No, nothing too crazy in terms of, hot takes or knee-jerk reactions. It's just you can kind of see where the Hurricanes are kind of thinking right now as the roster is somewhat set, since they are under $100,000 left. They're like right under $80,000 in terms of their cap space. So that's kind of, it makes sense of what you're looking at if there's no one else coming in from free agency or other possible PTS, since they only got 3 and they're all in the C2 group. And then it's, what prospects might show out, throughout camp and throughout preseason. So that's kind of your initial day one. All right, let's see where everyone's at type of thing. So like I said, nothing too crazy, just let's see what the Hurricanes are thinking as of right now. So stick around for segment 3, because we are going to jump into the Rod Brind'Amour press conference, as he did meet with me and answer some questions as well. So stick around for that, as we'll do that here in a second on a Friday edition of Locked On Hurricanes. You've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Well, we have something a little different for you. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then with the YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel at any time. Just visit FanDuel.com to make sure to download America's #1 sportsbook. Welcome back to segment 3 of Locked On Hurricanes, your team every day. So like I said, at the end of segment 2, we are going to jump into the Rod Brind'Amour press conference, as he did meet with media after practice on Thursday afternoon, just talking like going over through the offseason, his thoughts on just how the roster's been shaped up, and bringing the new guys in, and of course officially being back on the ice for the first time for the first day of on ice practice. So without delay, without having to make you guys wait, and without further ado, let's jump into the press conference with Rod Brind'Amour as he did meet with press on Thursday afternoon after day one of their Canes training camp.
Yeah, I thought it was, it's good. Guys, they all come ready to go. They work so hard in the off season that it's almost like just a regular practice day. You can just, start right away, and obviously, take some time for the new guys to understand exactly what's going on. But I felt like it was real positive.
How hard was this off season for you, seeing some of the guys that
yeah,
left?
Not good. And in that, term, we put a lot of, pride in, the people we bring in here, and people know that, and that's why they like our players. I mean, it's just hard. I mean, that's the nature of the business. And, I thought, you have a little mourning period, and then you move on, and then you look at the pieces we bring in, and you're really excited about what we were able to, bring into the group. And I think again, every year starts with a real exciting kind of feel, because there's opportunity and there's a lot of expectation, and I think everybody just wants to get going.
A year ago this time, Svech was rehabbing the knee still and trying to get ready. He's ready now this time. What can a healthy Svech mean to this team?
Yeah, well, you hit it on the head, really. I mean, you missed out some pieces, but really now it's, okay, we're relying more on guys that you would expect to have that. And there's other guys too, as you know, that this younger group of kind of, I call them, I don't want to say superstars, but they're stars. And it's going to be their time to really step up now, because maybe we don't have as many go-to guys to go to, but we certainly have enough. And I think they're excited about that.
Rod, when you talk about new guys coming in, there always is a adjustment period. We talked about with Orlov last year. Is there a combination of things like consulting with them when they come in and showing them video before they ever get here, or is it really a matter of you've got to go out and get these reps?
Well, you can't really, I don't show any video to guys. I don't think that's allowed. I mean, you're not really a lot of communication in the off season, so you definitely welcome them. And then today is the first day that you can actually show stuff. But I think in some cases, like Ghost has been here before, so there's some familiarity. Most guys understand how we play just from playing against us and what's expected. And then the details, I think most teams play the same way. There's very few variances. There's a couple different way teams do D-zone. There's a couple different way they do neutral zone. But realistically, everyone's playing the same game. And so it shouldn't be that hard to pick up. It's all within the little details that probably takes a little bit of time.
It's been a couple months now, but your relationship with Eric and how it's changed with him being elevated to GM, and your thoughts on how he's done taking over things and kind of his next step forward in his career.
Well, I mean, I don't know. We definitely spent a lot more time talking than we did in the past. That's for sure. Obviously, different roles. So I think he's done a great job, and there's a lot put on him. But what I appreciate, I think we're both kind of coming from a little bit different. Well, this is not a lot of different background, and that's been there always, but because of the role he was in, it wasn't maybe as much communication, but now we're daily almost, and I think there's a good learning curve for me to really appreciate his side of things, but in my opinion, more importantly for him to really get a feel for the everyday stuff that we were talking about, and he's done a great job of being willing to kind of to listen and understand kind of what goes on at this level. So I'm excited about that.
What about Ghost? I think you haven't seen much of him, obviously, now that he's back, but from when he was a Hurricane and the year he spent away, what have you seen his game elevate to? Because he's definitely become quite a different player.
Yeah, well, I don't think he's changed at all. I think, we really, really loved him as a player when he was here, and why we went and got him, and we definitely tried to keep him back in the when he was here. So it was great that he was available, and I think it was a great pickup. Like I said, we lost a couple of really good D, and I think with the additions of him, I think Walks will be great too. So I mean, yes, the obvious to your question, that's a big blow, but moving on now. We've had, like I said, my little mourning period, and now we move on, and I'm excited to see what these guys can do.
What about having a Brind'Amour in camp?
Yeah, that's
How's that
good.
for
It's
Dale?
exciting. Good opportunity for him, and I know how hard he's worked his whole life, so it's nice to kind of be able to coach it for at least a training camp and see what happens. But that's kind of nice too.
I spoke to Jack and talked about how obviously Seth had a huge year last year, and now do you think Jack can kind of take a similar turn and have his share of the spotlight and make a huge jump in his journey?
Well, we hope. I mean, I thought he did last year. I thought he had a really good year, and it's tough because of the rules and certain things, but I thought when we asked more of him, he did a great job of it, and that's the key is, it's not so much what you're capable of doing, it's what we ask you to do, and he's been capable and willing to do whatever, and that's huge.
I think this is year 7 for you here now, and obviously the success is, we all know it, but is there anything you reflected on the off season, hey, this year I want to try this or change this in my approach?
Well, you do that every off season and try to get better. You try to listen. I think I do a lot more. I need to be a better listener, and so definitely try to take in a lot of different views. But I know what works, and if you believe in what works, then you don't want to deviate too much from that. So we definitely, obviously, want to get to that next level and reach that next height. But like I told you guys yesterday, I think magic really is in the trying. In trying to get there, and we definitely do that, and I appreciate that with this group.
Rod, your forward group has a different look. A few new veteran guys come in. Anything in particular you want that group to be, like a little stronger on the forecheck, a little heavier, a little something? It helps redefine a team every year with the players you get in. What about those forwards?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, I think there's an identity that we play with that you don't want to deviate. So it's more getting those guys up to speed on what that is and how hard that is. I think everyone can talk about it, but until you actually get involved in it and visualize it and see how it actually works, those are the things we talked about new guys to having to really appreciate. But I don't think we're going to have too much deviation. It's more getting these guys to get right on it as quickly as possible.
Rand's had a great long
Last one,
career
please.
in the NHL, and now you get Piotr and Freddie. What are you excited about that duo?
Well, we know what I'm excited about is there's no question marks. Like, we know what we have, and the key to any team really is goaltending, as we know, and we do obviously worry about the health. I mean, that's always been a question, seems like, for a while with these guys. So we got to manage that as best we can. But if you just, any team would worry about that. If you just take that out of the equation, I think we got two of the better ones, and that's what makes it exciting.
Really awesome to hear from Rod Brind'Amour on day one of camp, and a lot of interesting things coming from the fact that it's a mourning period of losing the guys that they did have. Brett Pesce, Brady Shea, Steph Mason, and Taylor Vinen. But of course, you bring in the guys that you're excited about. You want to see how Jack Roslovic does with this team. William Carrier comes in. And then you have Gotcha, and Walker. You're excited to see what they can bring onto the blue line. That's, every year it's always been a top 5 defense. And you kind of find your replacement in Shea with Gotcha, your Pesce replacement in Walker. So you're excited to see what those two guys can do together. And of course, you have your tandem of Anderson and Chekhov. So it's like you kind of, goaltending is not really your question mark because, every team needs good goaltending. And you kind of have that with those two guys. So a lot of great stuff from Rod Brind'Amour. In terms of just looking at how the offseason is, of course, day one going into camp. Quick reminder for everyone who's watching this early in the morning or whoever's listening to this as well or watching on YouTube, the practice at Invisalign Arena starts at 9 a.m. with the second group, C2, and then 11 a.m. is going to be C1 that is open to the public at Invisalign Arena over there in Morrisville. So make sure if you're going to go to that, go there for 9 and 11 a.m. But that will wrap up the Friday edition of Locked On Hurricanes. Hope everyone enjoyed the episode. If you want to keep up anything that's going on with me when it comes to covering the Carolina Hurricanes and your Chicago Wolves, make sure you go check out all my articles at the Hockey Writers, and make sure you follow me at OneTrueZach on X. The podcast is LO_Hurricanes. There's a link tree to check out, like I said, all the articles, and then also check out my other podcast, The Searchcast. And for this show, make sure to search on all podcast platforms. Leave a 5-star rating and review because I might just read on the show for you guys on YouTube. Make sure to subscribe. Hit the bell notifications so you don't miss the show. Hit the thumbs up button to let me know that you like the show itself. That way it helps us grow the show more. We just hit 970 subscribers on YouTube. So make sure to keep sharing with other Caniacs that become everydayers just like you, because we are on the road to 1,000. And when we do hit 1,000, I got really something exciting and special planned for you guys. But I hope everyone enjoyed the Friday episode of Locked On Hurricanes. Hope everyone enjoys their Friday. Have a great weekend. And until next week, as always, let's go Canes.